All right. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Wonderful day. Give me a moment here. I forgot to turn this on here. I don't think I really need it, but let's see. That's better. Okay. Let me turn this down here. Got a lot of feedback on that. Okay. All right. Good to see you guys. I hope you guys are having a great day, great afternoon, or whatever. It's another beautiful day out here where we are. And yeah, it was about, I think it's touching on 90 degrees, but it's a nice 90. It's a very nice 90. And so we're out, so we were out a little bit today. And then we're going to go ahead and, getting ready for the next few days. We're going to be out of pocket for a little bit. So I figured I'd go ahead and do this video now. And because I wanted to have my deck cleared so that once I get, once we're finished over the next few days, I'll be able to jump in and continue our series on the Holy Spirit. So, and we do that over there on mybondtube.com. So you'll be able to catch it over there. But yeah, so we just did the, we had a little video last night, a broadcast last night. If you didn't catch that, I hope that was, I hope that, you got something out of that. Good to see everybody as you're coming into the chat. So good to see you guys. Let me tell you something. It's been something. This journey, if you will, has been really something. Not too long ago, we were part of something that said that we are, we're in the truth. See, we're in the truth now, but that was then, but now we're in the truth and, or the awakening, right? But when you start asking questions, the moment you start asking direct questions, and see, I frame my questions in such a way where it doesn't give people that much room to start coming in and monologuing on other stuff, because we ain't got time for that. I'm asking a specific question and we just want a specific answer. That's it, and all the other stuff, I'm not saying it's not important. We just want you to give us a direct answer. Just like I try to do that when I'm talking to you guys. I want to give you, I'm not trying to monologue on other things. Sometimes I guess you do, but for the most part, no, we try to get right to the point. You know what I'm saying? To the best way we can. And so, but it's been amazing. I would say in the last 30, maybe 40 days, I would say we probably lost about a little over 110 subscribers. Ooh, yeah, about 110 subscribers. Once we really start intensifying, what we've been doing as far as like really probing and asking these questions is in regards to things that we have been repeating. And we've said repeatedly, we're included in that. It's not just, we're not pointing fingers at other people. We also are just as guilty. This is something we've done in the past, simply just repeating things, but not really doing true due diligence and really finding out this stuff. And some of this is just kind of an overwash, if you will, from Christianity, because in Christianity, even, there were things that were told to us then that kind of, we never really questioned then. And so then when you rolled into the whole Hebrew thing, it was pretty much more the same, that you just repeated things and you didn't really question things at all. And so now we're in a place where we're saying, you know what, we're going to pause everything and we're going to take the time and we're going to start asking some questions. You know what I mean? We're going to really start asking some questions here and investigate. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we're going to do. And that's what we're doing now. And so, so I know for quite a few people, and we've already knew that it was going to be a bit too much for them. If you didn't see the broadcast last night, we had the microphone open, the phone line open for people to call in and to discuss and to tell us, okay, you are a Bible believer. Yes. Okay. All right. Now, you know that Yeshua, Jesus, whatever the name is that you may use for the Messiah in the Bible, talks about that you are going to do, all you have to do is simply believe on him and you will be performing greater works than he did. Now, when you look at the context of what Jesus was doing in those days, he was known as a healing source to his people. In other words, as described throughout Scripture, well, in the New Testament, people by the hundreds, if not thousands, were crowding all around him. I mean, there was one point where it was so many people, he had to get into a boat because they were just literally crowding him to the shoreline. And so he had to get into a boat. And so the scripture itself says that you, by simply believing on him, are going to do greater works than what he did. So the question was very simple. Are you, or do you know anyone that is doing greater works than what Jesus did as described in the Bible? And we posed that question and really didn't get, I mean, we got one caller and I'm grateful that she called, but even her conclusion, not really, and so that should cause you to take a pause for a second and say, now, wait a minute now, maybe we're on to something here, because we were promised this, but this ain't happening. And so another thing that we brought out yesterday was that we have been trained to automatically point at ourselves and say, well, there's something that we're not doing. Well, I'm not at that level. I'm not fasting enough, or I'm not praying enough. I'm not really attending church. I haven't memorized enough scriptures. We've trained ourselves to automatically fault us, put ourselves at fault over the text. The text, you can never question the text. You can never question it at all. Don't you dare question Massa. Don't that sound familiar? You can't question that, but it's us that's at fault. Now, another thing that the Bible, when you talk about the disciples who later became the apostles, we oftentimes, like the Catholic, like Rome has done, is that they have pretty much deified the apostles and have made it, so for a lot of us, when we read about the miracles of, let's say, Peter and John and some of the other disciples, when we read about their miracles, in our minds, we automatically say, well, they were actually part of the 12, so they were walking with Jesus. So they were at the power source. So, yeah, of course, they would be performing miracles. But how many generations past? So we really ain't that close to the power source like they were. Well, I thought the Bible says Christ in you, the hope of glory. I don't know. Am I reading the word right? Am I reading it right? Maybe I'm reading it wrong. And so what has happened for years and years and years and years is that we have, thanks to slavery, because this is really where it comes from. When it comes to, when we talk about black folks, thanks to slavery, we have been conditioned to never question what has been put in that book. You never question it at all. Don't you dare question it. It's all truth. And if you dare question it, then there's something wrong with you. You understand what I'm saying? And so that is what has been put out. And this is something that we have propagated from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And what I'm saying to you is that has to stop. It really does. Because I'm trying to show you not just, Christianity or any Bible-based thing, but religion in general has trained us not to use our minds, not to think. It's quite interesting that you won't see the biggest scientific minds coming out of the church. Not really. Now, Rome has a little telescope and all that stuff that they got there. But for the most part, you don't see the brightest scientific minds coming out of any kind of religion. Not really. I'm talking about like Christianity or Judaism or Islam, to a measure, right? But that's more Islam, Arabic, the Arabic world, on the other hand, you definitely had a lot of people who were astronomers and stuff like that. But for the most part, Religion isn't necessarily known as a platform for developing scientific minds, so to speak. There's always been this divide between science and religion. And you got, some cases where they try to bridge it together. But for the most part, religion in of itself has trained us not to use our minds. It doesn't mean that you have to be some scientific expert or, historian, great historian. But it does mean that you do need to be a person. You should be a person that is not afraid to think and to ask questions. This is how you learn, So for this broadcast, what we're going to do is we're going to take a closer look at two passages of scripture that has been, what you're going to find out has been very much misinterpreted. And as I've said just recently, at the beginning of this broadcast, I'm included in that. We have repeated the misinterpretation of this. But when you begin to step back, once you step out of the bubble and you begin to pay attention to the full context of it, you're going to see a much different picture. Okay. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually read. So there's going to be quite a bit of reading right out of the scripture. All right. And the way this is going to be interpreted, ultimately, it's not going to be my interpretation. It's going to be the word itself. It's going to be the scripture itself. We're going to allow the Bible itself to give us what is being said. Yours truly will not be implying anything as in terms of the interpretation of it. And you're going to see on the other side of it, there has been a lot of inference, misinterpretation that has been plugged in. You're going to see that there's a clear difference between the two. Okay. So that's what we're going to do in this broadcast. And again, welcome everybody that has joined us for this broadcast. Really appreciate it. And like I said, again, if there is going to be some reading in this. Okay. So if you don't have the time to listen, if you're a very impatient person and you're just basically tell me what to believe, tell me what to think type of person, this is not the platform for you. We're just simply going to present to you the factual information, and then ultimately it's up to you to decide on what you want to believe. But what I want to believe and what you want to believe does not change the truth. Okay. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So what we're going to do to start off, we're going to go right to the book of Revelation. Why not? Right. We're going to start, I believe, at chapter 2, if I'm not mistaken. That's when John, who's believed to be the one that wrote the book of Revelation, we're going to read his letters to the churches. Okay, we're going to read it. I may stop periodically, but for the most part, we're going to try to read straight through. And I want you to really listen, and I want you to really pay attention. As I'm reading, I may emphasize some things as I'm reading. That means really pay attention to what I'm saying in that part. Okay. All right. So that's what we're going to do. All righty. Let's go ahead and let me pull this up here. I thought I had it up. Hold on. Where? Yeah. All right. I guess I got to pull it up again. All right. So let me get this up here right quick. Hold on. I'm sorry about that. Now, where's my mouse? Okay. There you go. Okay. Here we go. Revelation chapter 2. Okay. I'll get that up here. Okay. Let's see. I'm pretty sure it starts at 2. Well, I'll start at 1, actually. I'll start at 1. I'm not going to read all of 1. I'm going to read like maybe the last few verses of 1, and then we're going to jump to chapter 2 and then go on from there. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go. And I may open it up for questions or comments, do a call in at the end. I may do that. We'll see. Okay. All right. So again, this is Revelation chapter 1, and I'm going to start. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. I'll start at verse 9. Okay. So I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back if you're just coming in. Okay. If you don't have the time to listen and you just want someone to tell you what to believe, this is not going to be the channel or the broadcast for you. Okay. We're going to take our time and we're going to look at all the details. Okay. All right, here we go. Chapter 1 of Revelation. We're going to start at verse 9. I, John, who also am your brother and companion in tribulation in the kingdom and patience of Jesus Christ, was in the isle that is called Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. I was in the spirit on the Lord's day and heard behind me a great voice of a trumpet saying, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, and what thou seest, write a book and send it unto the 7 churches which are in Asia. Okay, I'm pausing there for a second. Where are the 7 churches? They are located in Asia. That's pretty clear. Okay, they're in Asia. They're not in Africa. They're in Asia. All right, so he's writing to the churches in Asia, all right, which are in Asia, unto Ephesus, and unto Smyrna, and unto Pergamos, and unto Thyatira, and unto Sardis, and unto Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea. And just a side note, I mean, when you look at the city of Philadelphia, I'm talking about Philadelphia as in Philadelphia, PA, where I was born, right? Go Philly. Anyway, these people, the founders of this country, they are very much tied into the book of Revelations and the Bible in of itself. They didn't just pull out Philadelphia and just thought of it and just say, hey, Philadelphia, we're just going to call it Philadelphia. We actually gave the history of Philadelphia. Philadelphia, it comes from Philos, or Philos, which comes out of Egypt, and, you know, with the Grecian influence. And basically it, you know, it says it means love or brotherly love. All right. But when you hear the city of brotherly love, you think, oh, it's just, you know, brothers coming together and loving each other. No. The history behind it basically it goes back to a story took place in Egypt where there was a relationship between a brother and his sister. Okay. So that's where Philos comes from. When it says, when you say the city of brotherly love, that's what it's talking about. It ain't talking about camaraderie or anything. No, it's talking about incest. I'm laughing, y'all, but it ain't funny. Read about it. We talked about it. You can look it up. Take the time. Do your search on that. That's where it comes from. All right. And there's no reason, and there's no wonder why Philadelphia, right down the street from, I told you I was going to get off a little bit, but anyway, literally right down the street from City Hall, City Hall and Independence Hall, where they signed the Declaration of Independence. You have what's called a gayborhood. It's a hotbed for homosexuality and LGBT, right, literally a stone's throw away from where they signed the Declaration of Independence. So, you know, again, they don't just name these places just to name them. There's a long history that's tied to these things, and these people are a lot more clicked in than most of these YouTube people that you listen to out here. They know the history. Okay. So anyway, let's go. Unto Philadelphia and unto Laodicea. And I turned to see the voice that spake with me, and being turned, I saw the 7 golden candlesticks. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. And his head was like hair. Okay, I literally do not have to read this part, so I want just to hit that part about the 7 golden candlesticks. Okay, so you got that. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna jump to 16. And he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. All right, and then it goes on. Let's see. Let's see. All right, so I'm gonna jump down to 20, right? And it says, the mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks, The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches. And the 7 candlesticks, which thou sawest, are the 7 churches. So we're allowing John to kind of paint this picture here, okay? We're not inferring anything. So these 7 churches clearly to Jesus were very precious and very dear to him. So much so that Jesus gave him this grand vision about these 7 churches being represented as 7 stars and also as 7 golden candlesticks. So these churches are pretty precious and dear to him. And going back to verse 11, where were these churches located? In Asia. We're going to tell you in a moment where these churches were actually located. In fact, I'll go ahead and tell you now, because when they say the 7 churches were in Asia, Asia is actually that's a really big tent. But where specifically were these churches located? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Some of y'all already know, and some of y'all don't know. These 7 churches were located, and I did not bring that over. I didn't bring that image over either. Okay, hold on for a second. Oh, the 7 churches. Here we go. I got the image. All right, now I just got to make a quick slide here. Just going to slide this over here. All right. 7 churches coming over on my slide thingy. They're coming. Okay, here we go. 7 churches were located in Turkey. Okay, this is where the 7 churches are located in what we call modern day Turkey. Now, I find this very interesting because, so you're telling me that, I have to go back here. Okay, so this image here, what you're seeing is, when Jesus in the Bible, he says, go into all the world and preach the gospel. Now, when Jesus selected his disciples, these disciples were very loyal for the most part, and they were known to be very faithful. All right, that's why he chose them. Right. And so that means that they're going to do exactly what he called them to do. Right. Am I right? Yes. They're going to be obedient. And this is a point that I brought up earlier. Now, when you take a look at this map here, it gives us a pretty rough sketch, if you will, but pretty accurate on where the disciples actually traveled when they were obeying Jesus, when he told them to go into all the world. It looks like there's quite a few countries that are missing on here, don't it? It's quite a few. In fact, if Egypt wasn't in Africa, it probably wouldn't even be on this map. I see Italy, but see, you got to understand, the Bible, most of it was actually written in Egypt. I don't know if y'all know that or not, especially when you talk about the Septuagint. Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Bible. The Septuagint is the foundation of all the Bibles that we have out there today. Now, some people may say, well, you got the Ethiopian Bible. That's the oldest one. Yeah, it's the most complete Bible. That's true. But prior to the Ethiopian Bible, you had the Septuagint, which was written in Egypt. All right. So, yes, the Ethiopian Bible is a very old Bible. It is. It's known as the most complete. And they will also say it's the oldest, but they say the oldest complete. That's what they say. But then when you check the dates of the Septuagint and when it was written, the Septuagint was written way before that. So I'm like, why do y'all say that? So I don't get that, but the Septuagint was written in Egypt. And the Septuagint is what's used as the foundation of all the Bibles that we have today. It was written in Egypt. All right. So if it wasn't for that fact, Egypt wouldn't be on here. You know what else wouldn't be on here? The rest of Africa wouldn't be on here. It ain't on here at all, matter of fact. Now, if you've been following this platform, we have talked about going through, just scratching the surface, even though we've talked a lot about it, the rich history of Africa. I'm talking about these various cultures and kingdoms that were in Africa, going all the way down to South Africa, that it were around upwards to 70,000 years ago. 70,000. Africa, yes. 70,000, up to 70,000 years. They have archaeological evidence showing that Africa, particularly going down into central and the southern portion of Africa, had thriving kingdoms back then. Now, don't you find it quite interesting that the furthest they could go was Egypt? Oh, they can go all the way to India. They went to Iran. They went to Turkey. They went to Italy. You know what the common thread is? Even if you look at today's history, the history today, what's common with Iran, India, Turkey, Italy, is that you had Jewish, some people now, they weren't Jewish, they were Hebrew, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Practitioners of Judaism, how about we say that were living in India, in Iran, Turkey, and Italy. They were thriving, and to this very day, you'll still see evidence of them there. Iran, the whole family of Ayatollahs, for example, their root is in they have Jewish roots in there. Too many people don't know that, but it's true. So anyway, when Jesus said, go into all the world, they did just that, didn't they? But they left out quite a bit of the world, because to them, this was the world. Any country south of these places, they were obedient. I mean, I'm talking about once they were dead and gone. They brought the gospel, but they brought the gospel with a whip and with the gun. It wasn't like, hey, y'all, you want to come to Jesus? Here you come. We're going to have an altar call. We're going to have a tent meeting and you can come on down and we're going to. No, it was like, if you don't sit down, because we about to chain you up and take you into slavery. That's how the gospel, that's how Christianity came to us throughout the rest of the continent. Now, Christianity, you had the early stages of Christianity in Egypt, because you'll have people talk about, well, Christianity started in Africa. Well, technically that is correct, in Egypt. But outside of Egypt, Christianity came in the form of oppression. That is also true. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, we'll go ahead and continue on that. Let's go. So anyway, going back to my point here. So we're going to go back to, so here we go. Out of all of these places that the apostles traveled, and assumably they established assemblies here, the most precious of all churches to Jesus, according to Revelation, was the churches that were located in Turkey. Now, what you'll find interesting here is that there's something else that's in Turkey. Okay, so let's go to Turkey here for a second. What else do we find in Turkey? Let's go to chapter 2. All right, we're going to go to chapter 2 and we're going to read that and we're going to find out what else is going on in Turkey. Let's see. All right, so unto the angel of the church of Ephesus write, these things saith that he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand and walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. So these churches are very precious to Jesus, according to this passage. I know thy works and thy labor, and thy patience, and how thou canst bear them which are evil, and hast tried them which say that they are apostles and are not, and hast found them liars. That verse is sounding kind of familiar, isn't it? This is the King James Version. All right. I'll read that again. I know thy works and thy labor and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil, and that this thing is blocked up. Sorry. And thou hast tried them which say that they are apostles and are not, and have found them to be liars. Sounding kind of familiar there. Anyway, and has borne and has patience for my name's sake, has labored and has not fainted. Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. Remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent and do the first works, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will remove thy candlestick out of its place, except thou repent. For this thou hast that thou hast the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. That's a whole video in of itself. Who are the Nicolaitans? All right. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying unto the churches. To him that overcometh, I will give him to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. And let me see here. Give me just a moment here. Sorry, just getting something together here. Hold on. Oh, okay. I see where I'm going. All right. Back to the church of Smyrna. Okay, so we're going to the second church, which is the church of Smyrna. So let's go to that one. Make sure this thing is locked in. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm trying to make it big so y'all can follow along. I know it's kind of tiny, but hopefully you can see, or maybe follow along in your own Bible. All right, so okay, here we go. Verse 8. And unto the church and unto the angel of the church of Smyrna write, these things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. All right, I'm going to read that again. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them that which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. What I want you to take note there is this, is that you're going to see a common thread with all the churches that John is speaking to. He is talking in the present tense. Okay, I want to make sure you'll follow me on this. He is not talking about anything that is going to happen in the future. He's talking about what they are currently dealing with, not something that's going to happen in the future. Okay, I hope you're tracking with me on this. Okay, all right, so let's continue. The synagogue of Satan, verse 10. Fear none of these things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. And unto the church of Pergamos write these things. Write these things, saith he that have a sharp sword with two edges. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. I'm intentionally pausing here. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. and thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. Taking my time here. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. All right, let me read that again. But I have a few things against thee, because again, now he's talking present tense to people in that present. All right. So again, we're going to read it again. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them amongst you. You got people that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. Now, when you go into the Old Testament, who were the people that we read about that were the ones that were worshiping Baal? Now, you had other nations that were doing that, but primarily when you read in the Old Testament, it's talking about one group of people that had a problem worshiping Balaam. Or teaching that theology or whatever, right? It was the people of Israel. All right. It was the people of Israel. So this individual, Balaam, the doctrine of Balaam, because I'm remembering now as I'm talking to you, this was actually, I think this was actually an individual that was teaching them these dark doctrines, so to speak. That's what it was. I'm remembering now. And but Israel, it was Israel that had a problem with this going all the way back into the Old Testament. So the people that they were dealing with. So first of all, this scripture tells us that amongst you, I'll read it again. He says, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. This is exactly what the problem was with Israel going all the way back into the Old Testament. So this individual was amongst them. All right. So even though when you read this, it's talking about he was teaching them to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel. What's also being implied here is that the person that they were learning this from was also part of Israel. That's what's being implied here. But let's continue. So hast thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. Repent, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and I will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat the hidden manna, and give them a white stone, in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saying he that receiveth it. Okay, we're going to continue on. I'm probably going to skip a little bit because I want you to catch the theme here. So again, I'm going to keep emphasizing that the fact that John is addressing current events in that day. He's not talking about something that's going to happen in the future. He's talking about what was happening to a specific group of people at that specific time. He's not talking about what's happening in the future. All right. All right. So let's go on to the angel of the church of Thyatira. Right. These things saith the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire and his feet like fine brass. And then he goes on. He says, notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest the woman Jezebel. He goes into all of that. Right. Again, they were dealing with this whole thing of Jezebel in that particular church. All right. That particular church had that problem. And let's see. He has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying unto the churches. Okay, let's go on. And unto the angel of the church of Sardis, write these things, saith he that hath the seven spirits of God and the seven stars. I know thy works, and thou hast a name that thou livest and that art dead. Be watchful and strengthen these things which remain that are ready to die. For I have not found thy works perfect before God. Remember, therefore, and then he goes on to the details of what they are dealing with at that time. All right. And he goes on and says, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot his name out of the book of life. So if you guys fix the little problems that you're having here in this church right now, this is what's going to happen. This is the common thread that you're seeing. All right. He that overcometh shall be clothed in white raiment. Okay. And he says, unto the church of the in Philly, write these things, saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that had the key of David, he that openeth, that no man, and no man shutteth, and shutteth no man openeth. I know thy works, behold, I have set before you an open door that no man can shut. And it goes on, right? Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. All right. And he's basically blessing this church and saying, hey, listen, you guys are doing it. Keep doing it. I know what y'all dealing with. You're dealing with this group of people that saying they're calling themselves Jews, but they're not, but they do lie. Right. And then it goes on. All right. I think I probably covered all the churches there. Okay. So the common theme that we are pointing out here is that John, who's, they say is the writer of, of this book, the book of Revelation. John is he's writing about current events, things that these specific churches were dealing with. So if you notice, if you go back, there were two churches that he called out and said, hey, listen, I know you guys are dealing with this group that's going around that's saying that they're Jews, but they're really not. And they're liars. You know what I'm saying? So when you read that, that's what he's talking about. All right. Now, when you start digging in a little bit, now, who was this group? Well, you got to take it back a little bit further, because again, let's go back to our map here. Let's pull this up. Again, one more time. All of these churches were located in Turkey. All right. All of them were in Turkey. And so out of the seven churches, there were two churches, church in Smyrna and the church of Philadelphia, that was dealing with this group of people that, according to John, he said they call themselves Jews or not, but they do lie. Now, when you listen to, people, particularly in the Hebrew world, that will say, yeah, see, these were the fake Jews. These are the fake Jews that were being talked about here. Well, let's pump the brakes here for a second. Because we're going to need to, now you're going to really need to put your thinking cap on this for a second. Now, let me ask you something. When you hear, and I'm going to take time and then see when you guys say, I'm going to ask you something, and I'm going to look at the chat here, because I want to give people time to answer me in the chat. All right. So when people when they mention the origin of the fake Jews, when they say, well, the fake Jews, they came from this particular place, can you tell me in the chat, what is the name of this particular place they say that these quote unquote fake Jews came from? I'm going to give you some time, because I know there's a little delay in the broadcast, to, put it in the chat. All right. So give y'all a minute here to answer me. Okay. I mean, put some music on a little bit. Let me see what I got. No, not that one. Let's see. What do I have? Put something on. No. All right. So I'm gonna give y'all a moment here to answer me. When you listen to whoever it is that you listen to, your Hebrew teachers or whatever that really go into the history of where the fake Jews actually came from, what is the origin? What is the name of the place or the region that they say that these fake Jews came from? Okay, I'm still waiting. Yeah, what is the name of the place? I'm going to ask again. What is the name of the region? I'm looking for a name of a region specifically where they say that these fake Jews, where they came from. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm just waiting here on the chat. The name of the place, not Edom. No, just the name of the region. You're kind of getting there, though. You're kind of getting there, Lion Blood. Yeah, there you go. There you go, Chief niggas. Yes. There you go. He got it. He got it. You got it. You got it. You got it. Y'all getting it. Okay, good. Right on. I was just waiting. I know I had to wait for a moment. There you go. The Caucasus Mountains. Okay, so now let's go ahead and pull up this map again. So where the Caucasus Mountain, they already put the Turkey region. Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. The Caucasus Mountains, they flow into part of Turkey. You're gonna find some of the Caucasus Mountains. So when we talk about the fake Jews, right? And they came out of the Caucasus Mountains. Well, looking at this map, all of the churches are fake, made up of the fake ones, aren't they? They all came from the same point. Are we to assume that these 7 churches, they were all black people? Are we to assume that? So each and every one, so all of this time we have been saying that all the fake Jews, they came from the Caucasus Mountains. But where are the Caucasus Mountains? Where you find part of the Caucasus Mountains? In Turkey. So that means that the 7 churches are in Turkey, right? I mean, are near or very close to the Caucasus Mountains. So what this really means is that there's a lot of people now going to have to go back and they're going to have to rewrite the script now and maybe come out with some new documentaries and say, well, these 7 churches actually represented black people. They were all black people that were in Turkey now. So now Turkey was actually black now. So that's the new narrative that someone's going to have to come up with. That's the new explanation someone's going to have to come up with now. So these 7 churches that were the closest to the heart of Jesus, so much so he described them as 7 stars and 7 golden candlesticks. They were at the foot of the Caucasus Mountains. And we've been all this time, we've been calling them, they're the fake ones. The fake ones, that's where they came from. Yeah, the 7 churches were there. The 7 churches were there. That's where they're located. Right at the foot of the Caucasus Mountains. But there's something else in the Caucasus or in Turkey as well. And we'll get to that in a moment. So all this time we have been sitting up here saying that, again, making this accusation about, this Revelation 2:9, Revelation 3:9 is referring to they're the fake ones. But if you're going to use Revelation, you got to make sure you're using the full context of Revelation. And which includes the location of where this church was located or where these churches were located, which was at the foot or in and around the Caucasus Mountains, where many of us, many people out here have been saying that is the source of where the fake Jews came from. Right, which she said, which is in Asia. Correct, Darlene. Exact. Okay, so there you go. So that's the first thing. But what else is located? Now, someone mentioned the Noah's Ark, which is, yeah, that's a good point. That's good. But there's something else that we just read here that's also located in that in Turkey. There's something else. There is something else, and I'm going to give y'all time to answer that. I actually gave you the answer, but the ones that really got a thinking cap on, you'll get it. But if you miss it, that's okay, because we all going to end up with the answer in a moment, okay? So there is something else that Turkey, this region, is known for, and it's pretty significant, okay? So I'm going to give you a moment to answer that. All right. Let me put on our game show music. Okay. I'm going to give you time to think on that for a second. There is something else in this region, something else that is very, very, very significant. And then after that, we'll say a few more things and then we'll wrap it up. And it's not going to be too long today. So think about it. You may want to go back and read through it real quick. We're trying to make this a little interactive here. I want to hear them pages turning. You know, there's something else. There's something else that's very significant in this region. Very significant. I'll give y'all about another 30 seconds and then we'll get into it, okay? We'll go right to the verse. Someone said Transylvania. It probably is, which is very ironic. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to take you to the verse. Then we're going to reveal what else is there. Okay. So let's go on there and see what exactly is in that region. Okay. So the verse itself that I'm going to take you to is this is Revelation chapter 2, verse 13. All right. And it says this: I know thy works. This is from the King James 1611 Bible. That's why his works is spelt that way. I know thy works and where thou dwelleth, even where Satan's seat is. And thou holdest fast to my name, and thou hast denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. So, what else was in this region? It was is known as Satan's seat, but it also has another name. If you give me a moment, I'll bring it up. Here we go. I'll bring it up here. Let me go right to Wikipedia for this one. But you can look it up on your own. Pergamon. All right, Pergamon. And so it says also referred to as this modern Greek form, Pergamos, which is rich and powerful ancient Greek city in Mysia. It is located, and it tells you where it is, and they say in northwest of the modern city of Bergama, Turkey. And then they go into the history of it, you know, where it's located and all that stuff. So Pergamos. So Satan's seat, and basically when you really start reading about that more, and maybe we'll talk about that more, and you can look up on YouTube, there's plenty of people that talk about the significance of this place. I mean, you want to talk about demonic worship. I mean, it was just, this is a very evil source, if you will. So don't you find it a little bit strange and a little bit interesting that the most precious of churches, of all the assemblies, and I just showed you, as soon as I can get my act together here, here's where, come on, Dwayne. Here's where all the other apostles went. And assumingly they planted churches or assemblies like in India and Iran and Egypt and all this stuff. But the most precious of all churches was 7 churches that were not only in Turkey, but they were right at the foot of the Caucasus Mountains, where it's, for the most part, people say that's where, what people call the fake Jews, that's where they came from. But not only that, you have this place that's referred to as Satan's seat, all right there in the midst of it. This is a very interesting coincidence. All of this is all there. Well, Dwayne, what the heck are you saying? What I'm saying is that, again, this is why it's important to understand the people who wrote this Bible. All right, where these people are coming from. One of the things we've said over and over and over again, I think I played a video from a rabbi that was saying that, how people, the average Bible reader, they don't even have a clue about the different coded languages and symbology that's in the Bible. The number 7 and 7 stars, and what does that mean? And the 7 candlesticks and what that really means and all that stuff. They don't even have a clue. We're implying in there, and I'm putting myself in there, we have been implying in there, there's this separate strain of fake Jews that were trying to infiltrate the churches around there. And so those are the fake Jews, and those are the people that we're dealing with today. The Ashkenazis, they're the fake ones, right? That's what we've been saying. But when you look at where these 7 churches were actually located, they were located right where the quote unquote fake Jews were located. So basically, based off of what we know, all 7 churches were made up of what? The quote unquote fake Jews. Or the Khazars, right? All 7 of the churches. So who's fake? So now the next question that you should be asking is, okay, so when they say that there are people that are going around and call themselves Jews and are not and do lie, who specifically are they talking about? Now, there are a couple of sources out here, and it's really speculation, but I'm going to leave this part up to you to do your own homework, because I have not found a definitive, like, this is absolute. I've seen some things that are close, but I'm still not 100% on it. So that's why I'm tabling this part. But there's enough evidence that's telling us, and that's why I emphasized it was a verse here. It does give us some clues on this, that they're probably right on this. So let me find this verse here and let me see. I'm going to read this verse here again. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go back to verse 2 or Revelation chapter 2. Sorry. Revelation chapter 2 does give us a clue. All right. And then we go to. All right, here we go. And we go to verse 2. So Revelation 2, verse 2. And then I'm going to tell you kind of what the speculation is amongst several people. Okay, I'll put it that way. All right. So when you read this, it says, I know thy works and thy labor and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil, and thou hast tried them which say they are apostles and are not, but has found them liars. Okay. That's giving us some clue there, right? It's giving us some clue. And so what people, different researchers are saying, depending on who you listen to, is that you did have a group of individuals that were going around targeting the Jews. They were claiming to be the real Jews at that time. Remember, all the letters that John was writing to these churches, it wasn't talking to you or me and saying, hey, Dwayne, in 2023, this is what you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be dealing with fake Jews. I ain't live in Smyrna. Okay, well, I lived near Smyrna, Georgia, and I was born in Philly, but that's about as close as I get to it. But I didn't live in those time. I didn't live in that time. He was writing to them at that time what they were dealing with specifically. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so those two assemblies, those two bodies were dealing with this group that was apparently going around that were claiming to be that hey, we're the real ones, right? But according to John, he said, yeah, they're claiming to be that, but they're not. They're liars. So what we have done in today's world is that when we read this verse, verses, I should say, Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9, what we have done is implied that our own meaning to say, oh, they're talking about the fake Jews. They're talking about the Ashkenazis, right? We implied that to make it so we got in our time machine, so to speak, took these verses and made them applicable for us for our narrative today. But we were wrong because they weren't talking about that. We just showed you that all 7 of these churches were right at the foot of the Caucasus Mountains. So based on that, all 7 of these churches were made up of the very people that today we are calling fake. All 7 of them. The only way we can kind of pull out of that is that you're going to have someone come up with a documentary, or they're going to use some AI artwork and say, this is all the 7 churches. They were the only black people in Turkey, but everybody else were white. So that's the only way, you hear about whitewash. Well, there's blackwashing that's going on right now too. So are you guys getting me? Are you understanding what I'm saying? Am I missing something? The floor is open right now. Am I missing something here? Put it in the chat. Are you understanding what I'm saying here? So again, what have we covered? What have we kind of discovered together so far? Number 1, let's go back to the map again. Number 1, these churches, back up. All 7 of these churches were located in Turkey. All 7 of them. What was in Turkey? The Caucasus Mountains. Who came out of the Caucasus Mountains? By many historical accounts, it was the Ashkenazis. If that is the case, then that means that all 7 of these churches were in fact made up of the very people that we today have been calling fake. These were not black people. So you're going to have to make this make some sense to me now that we know that. But like I said, when it comes to Revelation 2:9, 3:9, again, I would really encourage you to take the time and to find out, because like I said, these are to me, that's the reason why I didn't really bring anything up on that, because there's people that are saying, like, some people are naming specific group. There's a specific group that was going around, and then there was others that was like, well, it's not enough for me to say, hey, listen, this is what it is. But when we go to Revelations chapter 2, verse 2, it does give us a hint that perhaps they're onto something, because what that's telling us is that clearly there was some people going around pretending to be the authentic, but they really were not. So now when we read, or when you read about, when someone brings up Revelation 2:9, 3:9, or the Synagogue of Satan, just know that that is not necessarily talking about who we call today the Ashkenazis in the context of the Bible. Do you understand what I'm saying? In the context of the Bible. Because John was referring to a specific group of people that was basically trying to steamroll over what he said were basically were the authentic people. But anyway, so in conclusion, because like I said, this wasn't going to be too long. In conclusion is this. This is why it's so important for us to really take the time and to really kind of comb through this stuff and to get the full context of things that we have been repeating over and over again. Like I said, I'm just as guilty, repeating these things, but really not taking the time. I'll be the main one. I used to be the main one. Yeah, they're the Revelation 2939 people, be the main one, but not realizing that if we're going to talk about the seven churches, well, all seven of the churches were in in Turkey, which was at the base of which was pretty much right at the foot of the Caucasus Mountains, and was also home to was referred to as the seat of Satan. And like I said, I just find it I think it really puzzles me when I think about the fact that out of all the places that, according to John, these churches were like the churches that were the most precious to Jesus, according to Revelation, were the churches that were closest to the seat of Satan. I find this to be really something. This is really something here. And it gives us kind of, more to think about, as we're reading the Bible. But also, like I said, and at the same time, I'm encouraging you to really take the time and to learn about the people who actually wrote the Bible. You understand what I'm saying? And when I say the people who wrote the Bible, I'm not talking Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they did not write that. All right. These were texts. These were letters that, going way back, that were found by the early church fathers. And they said, we got to name it something. So they put Matthew on one, Mark on the other, Luke and John. True story. That's how it came. Matthew, then make sure before I die, make sure you name that book after me. No. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. And it raises for me a lot more questions now. A lot more questions. It raises a lot more questions. Why is it that these churches that were the closest to the seat of Satan and were right there at the Caucasus Mountains were the most precious, because see, now this is undeniable. Now, some people can come and say, well, the maps are all wrong. The seven churches were actually located in Africa. Well, you really going to have to prove that one, because you're going to have to prove that one out. You're going to have to prove that one out. Yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it there. So anybody has any input, I'll be more than willing to put the phone number up. If you want to call in, I'll be more than willing to do it. Just let me know in the chat, because don't just say stuff, don't do this fade away comment stuff. I'll be more than willing to put the phone number up if you would like to chime in and add your thoughts on this. Would love to hear from you. In fact, I will put the phone number up. Just give me a moment. I'll set it up real quick and let you call in. Let me see here. Give me just a moment here. It'll only take me a few moments to do it. Okay. Let's see. Connect. Yeah, you are more than welcome to call. We're not debating. We're not going to be getting into something. We don't do that here, okay? All right, let me put this up here. And not disturb. Well, we ain't going to do that. All right, that. And then let me put the phone number up phone numbers on the screen. So yeah, so phone numbers on the screen now, and volume is up. My phone is ready. If you have any thoughts, anything you would like to add to this, I sure enough would love to hear your thoughts on this. And what do you have to say on this? And these are things that we're just, like I said, again, we're reading the text as is. We don't have to put any of our own, as you can see now, the one interpretation on one hand, we interpreted Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 is talking about who we call today the Ashkenazis, or, what we say, anyone but the black folks, right? But when you read the text as is, it's really not talking about them. It's really talking about, the whole thing is about them, when you read it. So anyway, got the phone number up on the screen, got my phone on. If you'd like to call in, the phone is up and I'm ready to listen and we're ready to learn. So I'll give y'all a few moments here. I'll put some music on. Oh, that sounds scary. I'll put that on. All right. So yeah, I'll just give people a few moments if you want to go ahead and call in, and and there you go. It's so interesting. And I said this at the beginning of the broadcast. It's like the more we do this, the more people are unsubscribing. I don't understand that. Can someone help me with that one? The more we say, okay, well, I don't understand. I'm just asking this. And here's we're looking at the facts as is. And, and would you like to chime in? Well, bye, click, gone. I don't understand that. Maybe someone can help me with that one. So yeah, I got the phone number up on the screen. And trust me, if you looked at our past broadcasts, I am not going to chew your head off. Okay. I don't do that. Okay. You can call, you can make your case and talk, but you got to stay on point. Okay. That's the only thing we ask. If you can't stay on point, if you got a hard time focusing, then I'm going to have to bring you back in. Okay. That's it. But if you call in about something else, that's unrelated to the topic that we're talking about now, then, we're just going to have to course correct on that. Okay. But trust me, hopefully if you've been listening to me this long, I ain't going to be doing that. As long as you ain't acting ignorant, we're cool. I'm going to give y'all another few minutes. Got the phone up on the screen. I ain't going to bite you. All right. I got a knife here. Look, I got a knife here. You get, but I'm not going to do nothing to y'all. So feel free to call in and give your thoughts. Okay, here we go. We got someone calling in. Hold on. All right. Caller, can you hear me? All right. Hold on. Let me, first of all, turn that off. Let's try this again. You know how this goes. All right, hold on. All right, how about now? Say something.
I can hear you.
There we go. All right. Hey, caller, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Dwayne?
All right. Go ahead. Talk to me. What's your thoughts on this?
So I have a question. I'm on the page you're on, but I do have a couple questions. Just actually food for thought. So, what if these names of these churches were actually changed from names of churches that were in Africa? And the reason why I'm asking is because I haven't done the research, Dwayne, but I heard in time past that the island of Patmos was really the island that had the prison that Nelson Mandela was on. Mm-hmm. So I never did any research, but I said, "Oh, okay. If the prison was actually on the island off of Africa, then maybe these churches were renamed from actual churches in Africa to churches that were over there in Asia." Also, I read in the book of Adam and Eve, not sure if those are true books, but I read, and I remember them saying that one of the Malaki, the angels, cast over Satan into Asia. I was like, So I haven't done any serious research, but I'm just asking, do you think maybe they changed the names of the churches from churches that were in Africa over to churches, or well, over to the landmarks in Asia?
I think it
And
could.
that's all I got.
I appreciate that. Okay, and you can stay on if you want, or you can hang up. Whatever is fine. I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna hang up.
Okay. All right. Well, you take care. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right. And I'll answer you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. All right. Cool. Thank you for the call. Okay. So I think this. I'm gonna give an umbrella answer, and then I'll get more to the specifics. One thing that I do maintain when it comes to the Bible itself, and did these people who wrote the Bible, is the Bible in any way, shape, or form, did it pull from African influence? I still maintain yes, it did. I absolutely believe that. That they did in fact pull from African influence. You can see it pretty much, especially when you go through the Old Testament. You'll see quite a number of things that's just too close for it not to be African influence. When you look at, for those that have been following us for a while, someone did a beautiful side-by-side comparison between what was it? It's not Zulu. What was the forgot the language. It's Kikongo. There you go. Kikongo, the Kikongo language and Hebrew. And they found a great number of words that in Kikongo is considered older than Hebrew. And see, people don't realize that, because again, it's anytime when you're listening to these historians out here, they always leave Africa out of it. It becomes even clearer and clearer to me. It's like, hey, y'all really going to talk about, y'all going to leave Africa out of everything. Like there's some video games out there that's like the civilizations or kingdoms of the world, and they'll have all the kingdoms, and they'll throw in Egypt, but that's it. They won't put the Congo in there. They won't put all these other, they leave them all out, but anyway, side by side, they found over 600 words in Kikongo language that was not only shared similar spellings, but those words also had the exact definition, same meanings. All right. So that's number one. But then you start looking at some of the, some of the practices and things like that. And they're very, very, very similar to that which you will find throughout the rest of Africa, not just Egypt, but throughout the rest of Africa. So I do believe that, yes, these people borrowed from everything and everyone, especially throughout a lot of the cultures throughout Africa. That's what I believe. Now, as it pertains to these churches, being renamed, and actually they were locations in Africa, it's a possibility. It's a possibility, that could be true. But then there's a lot of other things that would have to be true as well. In other words, what things did they really take out of that? Like, okay, let's say we established, okay, these churches, they were actually locations in Africa. Okay. All right. What else do we know about that? Do we have any other proof or evidence that connects? In other words, okay, if we said right now those 7 churches were actually in Africa, okay, fine. What other hard evidence do we have about those locations? What were those locations known for? Because clearly this narrative that they've been floating around about those churches is not 100% accurate, but the locations may have been accurate. They may have been in Africa, but for now, I think I think it's safe to say that that's probably not true, because I haven't heard that before, someone saying that these churches, were actually, or cities or towns or whatever, were actually places in Africa. I haven't heard that, but knowing the history of what these people have done, they have borrowed quite a bit from Africa. So they could be, but there's a whole lot that's missing. And then I don't want to get into the assumption with a lot of other things. You know what I'm saying? Because once you start getting into speculation and assumption, it gets real messy, and it gets very confusing too. So yeah, I don't want to get into that. But to the bigger point, absolutely, these people took quite a bit from Africa, while at the same time, leaving the rest of Africa out of it. They'll borrow and steal from, they'll talk about Egypt all the time, but they'll leave the rest of Africa out of the equation. So that's really, really something. So anyway, anybody else? Anybody got a call? Anything we talked about this week? Matter of fact, I'll leave the phone open for that. Anything at all. We talked about the Holy Spirit a little bit. Maybe you had a question about that. Someone said, for example, my community still practices scapegoating. That's a great example. That's a great example, that you'll find that in, throughout places in the continent. And what these people want to imply is we came up with that. No, y'all didn't come up with that. We've been doing that. Our people in Africa have been doing this stuff. Like I said, you got to keep in mind, see, what you got to understand when you're talking about Africa, you got to understand the continent itself is it's older than the Bible. What these people want you to believe that it only began in Egypt and that's it. You got to look at all these other kingdoms going from all the way the west coast of Africa. When you start looking at the Nok people, when you start going way back, I'm talking thousands and thousands of years. Why do you think all of these crazy countries are, they're holding all of these artifacts from Africa? You would think that would be such an easy thing. You would think that would be an easy thing, don't you? It would be an easy thing, for them just to return it, right? To give it back to Africa, to these different African nations, right? But they won't. They just sitting on it. They said, no, we ain't going to give it back. Why is that? Because they know if they were to make these things public, some of these things, these findings public, if they were to make these things public, I'm going to tell you right now, it would crack open minds all over the world, because people will begin to realize just how old the continent really is and how much history has been left out of our history books. And so instead, they want you to focus in on just the Bible is your history book, and that's it. Don't think of anything else, because anything coming out of Africa is witchcraft. That's it. You got black folks even repeating that. So anyway, going to give a last call. Anybody would like to contribute to this conversation and, and put it in the comments too. You can put it in the comments or put it in the chat or whatever. Because there's a whole lot of our history, I'm talking about as African-based people, that these people have intentionally left out. And your history does not start with the Bible. It doesn't. It does not start with the Bible. It doesn't. And you have a lot of people that are fully invested in trying to get you to think that way. What I'm telling you is it doesn't. This is just a narrative, one of many narratives that are out there. If you haven't seen it, I will say this. There's a show. Did we play that on? I think it's on my bond tube. Okay. Shh, don't tell nobody. Anyway, don't tell anybody, right? But it's on HBO too. It's a show called Silo. If you haven't, and that, I think it's on HBO or Cinemax, one of the two. Now they call it Max. But if you have not seen this show called Silo, I would heavily encourage you to watch that show. Because when you watch that show, what I'm saying is going to make a whole lot of sense. Meaning it's about a group of people who are a lot of people that are living in these underground silos, and all they know is they're the only survivors. That's all they know. But little do they realize they don't. They're not the only survivors. But the whole series is about them living in this closed-in world where they think they're the only ones. And this closed-in world it's ruled by, or is they have laws. They have law, statutes, and commandments. Gee, I wonder where they got that from. But anyway, they got law, statutes, laws that they abide by. And they said, you got to abide by this. You can't do this. You can't do that. Right. And that's it. But you are never to go outside of this silo, because if you go outside the silo, you're going to die. But you got to watch the show. That's all I got to tell you. And that is the kind of world that we're living in right now, family. There are constructs that are being built to have you thinking that your whole history begins with this book, or who you are only is rooted in this book, and that's it. I'm trying to tell you that is not true. There's a lot more to our story. There's a whole lot more to it. So anyway, I don't want to prolong this broadcast, but I wanted to kind of share that with you about Revelations 2:9 and 3:9, and giving you a little bit more of the backdrop of the history of that, and we basically got that wrong. We did. And now we are starting to understand what it really was talking about. And, and now we know these 7 churches, all 7 churches were located in Turkey, right where the Caucasus Mountains were, which means all these 7 churches were made up of the very people that we're calling fake. Not only that, but you also had Satan's seat located amongst these 7 churches too. But the thing that's very strange to us, or someone says on Apple TV, what's very strange to us is that out of all the churches or the assemblies that was set up all around the fruited plain, it's the favorite were the churches that were closest to the seat of Satan, and were made up of the people closest to the Caucasus Mountains. It's right there in the book if you read it. Keep it in its full context. Okay, family, I think that's it. We're done here. Thank you so much for tuning in to this broadcast. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And put in the comments below your thoughts or whatever. Like I said, keep it civil. Stay on point. Please, 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 I implore you, don't put copy and paste whole chapters of books, okay, in there, because I'm going to start deleting. As I get older, my patience, I don't have patience for that anymore. So don't put in a whole chapter of Leviticus somewhere in there like I'm supposed to understand what that means. Put it in your own language, in your own tongue, okay? Because if it ain't in your own tongue, I don't understand, okay? We don't speak it. You see me spitting over tripping over these these and thous over here. I can't do it, okay? Talk in your own language and make your case clear so that the rest of us can understand, okay? All right, family, that's it. That's all I have for you. Thank you so much. You guys take care, and we'll be talking again soon. Take care now.